What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in. We got a great show. It's a different look now. This is the most guests that we've had on the show thus far. I'm excited to have everyone on because we are talking wine today.
Yes.
Jeremy Holloway, my friend, you were the catalyst for this episode happening. When we were talking wine, I was inspired. I was excited. You know, me being a beer first guy, it's important to get somebody who gets me motivated back into wine, where it all started for me on the beverage side. And so that was a lot of fun. So Jeremy Holloway, sommelier at Mercantile Dining and Provision in Denver. And when we were talking, you were pretty adamant about a couple different channels for people to look into when it came to thinking about wine in this moment right now, with being, you know, shelter at home and quarantine and all that. And you were very quick to give a shout out to Steve and Jayme and their cat. I like it. What they were doing with virtual wine tastings. And I was really fascinated. It was a couple weeks ago, so it was early on in kind of that dynamic of connecting people digitally. So, Jeremy, tell us just real quick what's going on with you, and then please give us the full grand introduction to Steve and Jayme at the Storm Cellar.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's nice chatting with you again, Chef. Steve and Jayme, like, they're so embedded in the community. I first met them over at Kuhil's. Jayme actually worked over there for a little while as well, back when they were still Somms in the city. And Chef Tom, absolutely great as well. But they are just so embedded in the community. They do this really cool weekly happy hour where they literally just sit on Instagram Live. They take questions. They talk about their wine, kind of what the vineyard's doing. Absolutely awesome, because their wines for me as a floor somm are just so easy to pair with food. So I'm really excited to be able to taste one of my favorites this evening. Jayme and Steve. Steve used to work over at Shanahan's for a long time. Jamie's been to a few different restaurants down in Denver, but feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I've seen so many people on Instagram and on all these Facebook and different sites that are literally doing exactly what you guys are doing now, but they're just starting to catch up. So tell us a little bit more kind of what's going on in your world.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us first.
All together now. It's definitely, so just as an introduction, so we're the farming and winemaking duo behind our winery project called the Storm Cellar. And like Jeremy said, we were somms, restaurant managers, anything hospitality in the dining scene for like 15 years plus. And in 2017, we completely did a 180, not necessarily a recommended jump, but to become full-time farmers and eventually winemakers. So we make white wines and rosés.
Yeah, so in 2017, we bought this property. It was formerly owned by Plum Creek Cellar. Plum Creek is out of Palisade, and this was kind of their white wine outpost. The original owner, Doug Phillips, who has since long passed away, but he really did a lot of research into the West Oaks AVA where we are, and found that it was, he thought, suited for white wine. So they planted this vineyard originally in '87. Mm-hmm. They won all kind of awards back in the '90s for the wines that they made from this vineyard, but
especially their Chardonnay.
But after he passed away, I don't know if it was just a little too far away or what, but it just kind of fell by the wayside. It was a big fixer-upper when we bought it, but we still have vines here that were planted back in '87, some own-rooted old Wente clone Chardonnay vines over 30 years old, which is really super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like Jayme said, it was a huge 180. You study wine from the somm perspective, and it is get all these ideas in your head of how it works.
Yeah.
But the knowledge is so different than the physicality of it. You know, if you're a somm, you think, how do I make this wine? Well, I have to transfer it from this tank to this tank through a pump or something. You know, you can kind of get your head around that. But now it's like, how do I connect this device? You know, this
and then
thing.
How do you fix that device?
This device is 30 years old. It's made in Italy, to this brand new Japanese thing, and metric and standard conversions. It's like the physicality of creating a winery has been a sharp learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go from thinking of wine of a connective tissue between experience and culture and storytelling and food and beverage to figuring out how the hell to connect a clamp to a hose, schlepping stuff around, and all of a sudden you're digging in the dirt. I think I like that you guys are reflective in that moment. And I think now I'm guessing that your presentation of wine comes from a completely different place. Absolutely. Now that it's not about pouring the wine, but it's about figuring out how the hell to get that wine into that bottle, the whole process.
Yeah, I love that we have both of those sides, though, because somms talk about wine one way and winemakers talk about it a different way. And then vineyard managers are talking about a whole other set of issues. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I love the fact that we have hospitality roots. Jeremy and you, Jensen, were mentioning that we're doing virtual tastings now. Talking to people in the middle of a crisis. I mean, that happens a lot of times on the floor every night. And being able to convey it and connect with people in the middle of something absolutely gut-wrenching is definitely a skill set that we're grateful to have. Not to say it's not a smooth ride, but it's a cherished skill set.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've talked about it several times. Actually, I think I talked about it on the earlier episode today with Carlo the Magna, who's got a restaurant in Portland, that we somehow in the hospitality industry, we like thrive on bad news. We're so used to this table is running long. What happened with this dish? Timing is off. This is dying in the window. Like they changed vintages on us and we had no idea. That's the 2016, not the 15, all that kind of stuff. We kind of like it in this weird masochistic way that is our nature. We don't like no news. And so being cut off from interaction, this is the new face-to-face in this moment, which is crazy for us because we're so used to being right over somebody's shoulder, pouring them wine, right there, interacting with them, sensing every little nuance of their emotion, their engagement, their behavior, all of those things. So that was like me venting about how much we miss that. I know you all miss that type of interaction as well. Talk about the virtual wine tasting. And first, tell me, were you doing that before all of this? You had a virtual wine tasting going?
So we hadn't done like a virtual tasting. Okay. We were always doing Instagram stories, posting as real as we could. Really
okay. I was interested if there was a transition from doing it pre and post, but so this started here. All right. So talk about how you were able to so quickly recognize that that was where the white space was going to be and the opportunity to continue to communicate your story, your brand, and bring your wines kind of to your audience.
Well, we realized that our tasting room, this would be the first summer that we would have a tasting room. Last year we were only, we were really focusing on key restaurant accounts, retail accounts. And we were so excited to have that tasting room open on weekends and still keep our connections within the state. But when we realized that was shutting down, we wanted that connection. We saw potential sales revenue, not a potential reality of a sales revenue closure on multiple levels. And we had already cultivated this online relationship. We felt comfortable with it. And in fact, back in the late fall, we had already we'd already come up with the idea to do like somm-led, wine tastings and pairings. So it was already on the back burner. And so we were able to pull the trigger because we already let that marinate for a while.
It was interesting. 2 months ago, before this whole thing got started, we're having meetings with the other wineries in our AVA. And a big part of our focus of those meetings, amazingly enough, was trying to come up with a sort of brand identity for this collective group of wineries. And so we helped orchestrate this whole thing. And then all of a sudden, during all that, we start talking about, of course, what is our brand? What is our thing? And certainly our brand is this place, this amazing place. But our brand it's us too. It's the two of us. And we knew that, Jamie is sort of our photographer and social media guru this whole time. She started the Storm Cellar Instagram page 6 months before we even closed on the property.
Which was kind of gutsy. I was like ready to delete it if nothing happened. Yeah.
So telling the story has been part of it the whole time, but it's been static photos or it's been storytelling via text on IG, not as much of us. But then once we kind of emerged from our first couple years and started leading wine dinners, and we're involved with the Colorado Five back in the Somm community, we realized how much from people's feedback that we were as much a part of this, and so it's fortuitous timing, I guess, in a terrible situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to touch on something to then segue and give Jeremy an opportunity to talk about this. So a lot of years, especially when I was the chef at now closed Row 14, we were really big and did quite a few things with CAVE, which is the Colorado, Viticulture Enology. What's the A stand for? Association. Colorado Association for Viticulture and Enology. And that's the body that's really helping to be the guild for winemakers. And the biggest thing I talked about is like, you got to have an identity, right? Like you can't try to be like California Junior and like be able to break through all of the static and white noise that is out there. And so I talked a lot about like, just pick some grapes. Like, and the 3 grapes that I was always really hyped on were Riesling, Viognier, and Cab Franc. I was like, there's a space there potentially for those grapes, and there's an opportunity, and they grow well. But if you're trying to grow, anyway, there's people growing other things that they may or may not be wanting to grow. And the identity was really important. And so we spent a lot of time also trying to bring in other restaurateurs, somms across Denver to get them tasting some of these wines. Jacob Harkins, I'm guessing you guys know, was doing a lot of work on that front. Anyway, getting restaurants to give a shit about Colorado wine was a challenge.
Yeah.
And it maybe still is a challenge. So Jeremy, I'm interested from your perspective, being in the restaurant, when you are trying to showcase Colorado and showcase local brands, yet also have a high expectation of just the best wine, where people saying, well, that's not the wine that I drink. What I drink is from the Russian River Valley, and that's all I care about. So talk about from a restaurant perspective, what it is to think about Colorado wine identity, and then why the Storm Cellar specifically has broken through for you.
Oh, absolutely. No, and you're 100% right. We have guests from all walks of life who they know exactly what they want, and that's what they're going to get. And then we have other people who are a little bit more open to things. Honestly, the way I personally, as a floor somm, usually get people excited about wine that they don't really know about is obviously I listen to them. That's the biggest part of my job, is just listening to the guests, figuring out what they're looking for. And if they don't know what they look for, then ask them a few questions so I can figure that out. But a lot of the times what I enjoy doing is just putting wine in front of people. Just kind of not like a blind, you don't have to guess what it is. Just, do you like it? Do you not like it? And so if they usually ask me, I want something that's going to be, maybe a little bit dry, but I don't really mind, like a little bit of sweetness, or I just really want something refreshing. And so I'll be like, okay, perfect. I'll put a little taster in front of them. They'll try it. And then all of a sudden, if I can get them to change their mind on what they thought Colorado wine was, I do that all the time. We actually, last time I saw Jamie and Steve, they came into Mercantile, and we did the same thing with Monk's Hood, which is another Colorado winery. And they also do white wine. So we're like, Jamie, Steve, you got to try this. Like, let me know what your opinion is on it. And then most of the time, though, when you let people blind them, because at Mercantile, really what we try to focus on is not just about having the best wine. We want to have true representations of styles, but also be able to connect guests with the people behind them. That's really kind of what will get people a little bit more into it, is knowing the backstory and that connection. So one thing that really got me onto Storm Cellar personally, not just the fact that Jamie and Steve are just like great people to hang out with and drink wine, but really their wine is they're what we call in the somm world, in the chef world probably, they're acid freaks, super mouthwatering, crisp white wines that pair perfect with food. So being like an enophile type of really into like different nuances and just smelling things and tasting things all the time, it's just really fun to pair. And if you can just put that next to like a dish that someone's already having, they're like, okay, I want a glass of that. And then you just tell them the story. Then you connect with them. And that's what gets people excited. Then maybe next time they're out, they see a bottle of Storm Cellar. It's an easy decision for them to pick them up.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, Steve and Jamie, it seems like you kind of have the inside track because you do understand how that wine is going to be represented throughout the whole lifespan of it getting to the guests. And I think that makes a big difference. Sometimes there is a disconnect from the farmer, right? The winemaker, the restaurant, the somm, all the way to the guest. And as much as you can reduce friction through that process, you're going to have an opportunity. So I really appreciate that. I want you guys, we're going to taste wine. We need to get to this. It was important to get background, but I feel like we've been talking too much. So I like your label. Your label is sideways. This is counter to every bottle of wine that's been since forever. The label is this way. You wanted to represent your brand horizontally versus vertically. Talk about why that was important to you. And very quickly, because we got to start drinking wine.
Cool. Yeah, I'm here. So this is actually a literal nod to our hospitality years past. So we decided there's a moment where you have a somm, server, manager, someone coming over and pouring over your right shoulder, and you kind of crossing your head to read this vertically oriented label. And we've even been told by some retail accounts, I mean, that's like retail suicide. Why do you have your label oriented that way? It's like, this is the way we're doing it. Because we wanted to really not capitalize, but really focus on that moment that you share with the guest. And so, Steve both of us have said that form follows function. And really, we wanted to make sure that the functionality of putting the guest first and that magical moment that you have, like Jeremy mentioned, you have that moment where you taste the wine, you have this moment where you pair a story with what you're drinking, and you go and visit the winery in the future. Maybe you find it on a shelf, and it just, it's exciting. Yeah. We were really happy about that.
I love it because you're disrupting it in a way that's not just like trying to be clever for clever's sake. It's literally very practical. And so for everyone watching, Betsy.
Somebody say wine.
Yeah. Here. Betsy had to clean up I broke a glass on my way down. So I was like, why don't you come up and grab a little bit of wine? So this is my enophile here, Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
Betsy.
Yes. I'm going to tell you all about food pairings and pontificate and how I'm picking up notes of X, Y, and Z, and she's going to tell you if the wine is good.
So. We can chat about the wine too.
Definitely.
Yeah, so like Jamie said, our vineyard is planted to white wine varieties, primarily Riesling. We've got 6.5, 7 acres of Riesling. That's actually what we're out pruning right now. And it's separated into three different blocks on the property. We've got one big long block that's the deepest, richest soil. And we've got one really rocky outcropping, and that rocky outcropping is kind of where we created our dry Riesling. But then in one corner of the vineyard, we have these really steep rows that face perfectly southeast. Mm-hmm. And we noticed right away when we moved out here that the winter snow melted there first in the spring, and that part of the vineyard held the heat longest into the fall because of its orientation. So starting in the 2018 vintage, what we did is we go out to that block, the super steep rows, and we prune those very first thing. But then they're also that block is what we harvest the very last thing. Yeah. So kind of our rule every year is it comes down when nature says it's time to take those grapes down.
And we prune those first because we have such a compact growing season. And so we want to get after those vines as soon as we can. So, and to get the Riesling grapes going because they take the longest to actually ripen.
Right. So in 2018, we made 3 different versions of a Riesling. We made a dry version, our estate version, which is an off-dry style, and this is our reserve Riesling that came from those really steep rows. And we harvested it right after a freeze event here.
And we've noticed, I mean, this was our first vintage ever making wine from start to finish. So truly, it was an experiment, but it was an experiment that we couldn't necessarily fail. We didn't have a backup business plan for that. So we, the phrase aces in places, we actually signed up a winemaking consultant that lives in Pennsylvania. Her name is Denise Gardner, and she has actually, to this point, never tasted our wines. And she actually reads like she's like a chemist by trade, profession. And so she is able to analyze these things that we can't. But as somms, we're able to like really cohesively put together like, okay, this wine is ready. Okay, these grapes are ready to pick. So it was a very symbiotic relationship. You know, talking about connections, it was serendipitous that we found her. Actually, I think it was through CAVE, the Colorado Association for Viticulture and Enology. She was a speaker at the annual convention. But like Steve was saying, we picked this fruit just after a frost. And when it gets cold enough, excuse me, in a frost event, you have basically like between 24 and 36 hours to pick the fruit a lot of times, or else that stem that connects the cluster to the actual vine, the clusters will just fall to the ground. But tasting those 4 different tanks, like the 2 that we picked before the frost versus the 2 picked after the frost, not only was the color different, and actually I can show you, we have a little tank sample. You can see it's actually like a golden color. It kind of looks like a really old Sauterne or a Chardonnay. That was picked after the frost because the berries turn this beautiful amber, almost brown color, and it changes the profile actually of the flavor of the juice. And so this is like almost 100% post-frost juice that you're tasting.
And it's
I
interesting.
definitely pick up the sweetness from that too, which is super balanced. But first, Betsy, is this wine good?
Yes, I will be porch drinking in the snow today.
Okay. I'm gonna hold on to this for now for the rest of the show, Betsy, but this will be yours. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. We were super excited. We got asked by the American Fine Wine Competition, which is the largest invitation-only wine competition in the country. It happens in Hollywood, Florida, early in the year every year. So we got asked last fall to submit our 3 Rieslings, and you have to send them bottles. They have to vet them first to make sure they're good. So it's a really high-tier event, invitation only. And we got to enter our 3 Rieslings, and this Riesling got a double gold medal and 94 points, which was crazy. There were only 4 Rieslings in the country that scored 94 points, which was pretty awesome for sure.
We were pumped about that, to say the least.
Yeah, Riesling is such an interesting wine. It's all over the place in the spectrum of sweetness to acidity, right? In its potential for minerality and petrol and some of those type of things. People either love it, hate it, or have no idea what to think about it, right? So I like it in the sense that it's going to challenge you in some way, and potentially some things you may or may not like about other wines could actually work really well in a wine like this. And I also love that if it's on the sweet side or the high acid, bone dry, super minerality side, it's really, really good with food. It just doesn't get enough love because it's not often one that you're just going to sit down, out back with a group of friends and just pound a bunch of Riesling like you can some other white wines. It needs food, which is why I love it. So let's talk about that. Jeremy, first thoughts when you're picking up this wine, and where do you go when you start thinking about food with this wine specifically?
Absolutely. I mean, so the Riesling is probably if I was stuck on an island and I could only pick one style or one grape, Riesling would be it, because you can it takes you where it's from. Like, it is such a great representation of where it's from. So many different styles. You can get sweet, you can get bone dry, and you can get right there in the middle. This wine was, as soon as I put my face in the glass, I just immediately get this really awesome ripe fruit note. But it also has this really cool kind of sense of minerality and floral component that's really fun. So there's usually the basic rules for pairing. That's always easy. It's weight, matching your weight. You never want a wine that's heavier or lighter than your dish. But also with something that has a little bit more off dry character like this, it definitely has a little bit of presence of sugar palate. You don't feel it too much, it's not cloying, because the acidity is just so refreshing. And that's really what dryness is. It's more of a balance between mouthwatering acidity and then the actual kind of sugar component in there, which is kind of what Jamie was saying. That's the chemistry behind it, and it gets into this whole realm. You need a PhD to really understand a lot of this stuff.
For sure.
But for this, recipe. I picked this one up, right? I picked this one up at Mercantile specifically because we had a chicken dish that used a muhammara. And then we also put some of our Fruition Farm feta on there. And muhammara has this it's like a Middle Eastern spice, like a chili spice. So it has this like subtle spiciness to it, but it also has this nutty component as well. You can choose different nuts to use in it. And sweet wine or slightly sweet wine, love spicy food. So that's really kind of the initial pairing that I usually go with. Classic pairings though, like Riesling for me, usually go really well with comfort food. Anything that's like braised all day long, it's going to be great with. If you're at home and you have a bottle of Riesling by Storm Cellar, highly recommend. Maybe get some takeout, some pad thai or some curry, something with like nice, bold, exotic type of spices, because you pick up these nuanced spice notes in here as well, kind of exotic notes, and that just kind of lifts it. A great pairing is really, to me, about you take a drink of wine, you want a bite of food, and then you want to drink a wine. And it's just like this awesome marriage. You go back and forth. If you wanted to do like a junk food pairing, though, for sure, jalapeno poppers.
Oh my God.
I think that's like one of the coolest pairings. And then even more junkier than that is like those, what are those sweet, spicy, like Dorito chips? Anything with like spicy, sweet type of sour flavors and with wine, it's going to be mind blowing.
You just changed my life. I make fun of jalapeno poppers all the time because it was always like the canned table approach. Hi, my name is Karen. I'll be your server tonight. Can I start you with some jalapeno poppers? Like that. So jalapeno poppers were always associated with that. Even though everything about what jalapeno poppers are, I love. Cream cheese, breaded jalapeno. Come on. So I'm with you. I'm making jalapeno poppers. It's happening. Unbelievable. All right. So Steve and Jayme, Thai food. Yes, I saw all of us reacting. We all like spice. It's an automatic with this umami, soy. These all play really well. What are a couple of the other nuanced pairings that you like? And now I don't know what junk food you're going to follow jalapeno poppers up with, but let's see what you have for a junk food pairing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a place. It's we all know it's Root Down in Denver, and they have this appetizer called Devils on Horseback, and it's fondue peppers with this cheese fondue with a little sherry gastrique, and it's bacon wrapped. And so you've got that savory fat component, and you've got that spicy pepperdew. And I was just like, jalapeno poppers all the way. Mine is the breading, but also, like jalapeno, those Miss Vicky's jalapeno chips and Kettle jalapeno chips. Both of those are so good with it.
Yeah, I want to go to Mercantile and try this there just because so often people order a charcuterie board and they order a bottle of Cabernet or something enormous to go with it, and it just swamps over everything. I'm not saying I don't like that pairing, but to try a wine like this with a really dialed out charcuterie board, the savory meat components are totally different than they would if you ate it with a red wine, or a red wine with a bunch of tannins in particular. The sweetness plays totally different than tannins play. I love this kind of wine with a dialed out charcuterie setting.
And you could also do it, sometimes it's tricky to pair like something that has a little bit of residual sugar. I mean, granted, we have some acid to keep that balance, but with something like dessert, it doesn't have to be something sweet. Like you said, Thai food, a pho bowl would be so good. But we've done like a pear crisp or an apple crisp, even with just a little blue cheese or some salt on it. And it's just magic.
Yep, I like everything we're all saying. I'm starving right now. This is a mistake. I'm like trying to do some intermittent fasting so I don't come out plus 50 on this thing, and now I'm like regretting because I want all those things. All right, I'm going to take you guys classic, contemporary, and then junk food. Classic for me was something like this. Right when I just put my schnoz in it, and you see this thing, it's not just for show. It works good, and right away I just think of duck. Duck for me with Riesling like this that has the little bit of acid but residual sugar and sweetness to it. It's got enough body. So duck is something that I like with it. You mentioned like gastrique, stuff like that. That's something classic with duck. I think of heavy herbs like marjoram and even flowers like lavender, right? With this, I get like overripe pineapple where the acidity is starting to drop. almost bruised a little bit. I get like a little of beeswax. I don't pick up any petrol really, and but I get that beeswax, that lanolin type thing, which I like. So duck for me, which can take sweet, acid. It's got all that fat, crispy skin. I'm there. You guys with me? Duck, right? Like
there's a restaurant in
classic. Then when I'm thinking contemporary, we talked about spice. I like this wine specifically with so much soy that your face starts to pucker a little bit. And that's what I think about, like intense amounts of umami. And so I think of getting really spicy, like miso ramen with something like this. I think it's really, really great. Lots of sashimi togarashi. The egg will go really, really well with that. Alkaline noodles, the bite that it has and that slipperiness on the palate, I think will play nice with the body of this, which is good. It almost has a little bit of that texture like a rich, like miso broth would have. And so I think you're matching intensity and mouthfeel a little bit. So I really like that, like a lot. Like I'm pretty sure I have some bone broth that I'm going to turn into either ramen broth or pho broth with this wine. Betsy might not get her hands on this whole bottle of wine. I might have to get it back. And then this to me like scream potato chips. Like I am such a fan of potato chips with like a lot of different wines, and I think I want some like barbecue style potato chips with, right? Like
yes,
not spicy really, but has some spice to it, has some richness to it, tons of crunch too. Like I almost want to be like cracking my teeth while like wine like swirls around your mouth. I think it's a mouthfeel. The sensory side of it is really compelling in this wine as well. So I too like this wine. Betsy was absolutely correct. This wine deserves a place. And I just want to like show people again. I am so floored and like so appreciative of forward-thinking, creative people. The fact that your wine label is meant to be poured at a restaurant is so important. Like I don't want to understate that. And I also don't want to just blow smoke here. Like I just think that this is the kind of thing where people at restaurants who work in the restaurants will feel like this wine is for me. I'm meant to pour this wine at this restaurant, and that people that are getting that wine will feel like there's a thoughtful, it's well curated. So I really like that as well. You guys are onto something. I like everything that you guys are talking about. The wine itself is good. And you know what? That's the most important thing. I mean, Steve and Jayme, like you can be clever about your branding. You can have a smart way of design. You can have a great brand and identity, but if your wine is shit in the glass, it doesn't matter. So I really appreciate that. All right, let's wrap this up because I want to drink some more of this wine, and I don't want to look like a lush on camera over here. It is almost past noon here in Colorado, but some last thoughts, Steve and Jayme, about kind of just this moment for you as winemakers, as new winemakers, and just being a part of the hospitality industry, that we're needing some moments of levity. We're needing some connectivity. We're needing a glass of wine in this moment. So talk to some of those, what we call unsung hospitalities out there, heroes out there that are needing some wine and needing some story right now.
Yeah.
Good question.
That is a good question.
It's been such a dramatic last month. It seems like a blur, honestly. The whole government loans and the PPP and all that has been pretty much a nightmare for us. That's cost us
A lot of
countless
time.
hours that really didn't pan out for us at all, unfortunately. So we've had to pivot, totally shift our whole business model. So we're behind on winery work. We're getting wrapped up in bottling and pruning, and we should have been doing things a month ago. But all in all, there will be positive outcomes from this for us. Yeah. There will be.
I mean, I don't know. Like I said earlier, it's like there's still like no plan for failure. We have to go ahead with the goal of like, regardless if we open up for the tasting room, we're going to continue with our virtual tastings. We've had such an amazing connection that has lifted our spirits, even when we've been tired from pruning all day or doing something in the winery. And you just kind of shop in. You wake up and you see these people who have become basically like an online family. and they are finding ways to support you in a creative way. And we've had so much fun. When you speak about connections, we've partnered with a local DJ, Corey Stanton. She is DJ Coco Love. She has an amazing auditory talent. She has two playlists so far. So one that matches our dry Riesling and one that matches our rosé. You can find it on our website. But the dry Riesling is just like sassy, angular, electronic dance. Exactly, I see you there. And then we have a that came out today, and that pairs with our rosé. It's called Happy Tacos, and it's kind of like, because tacos is one of our favorite pairings for like a nice dry rosé. So we're gonna crank that up in a little bit and really help us get some racking done in the winery. So moments like that where you connect with someone. Find ways to creatively connect, and I get chills thinking about it. It's like that connection with the guest. You get to enjoy that all over again, and it gives you the energy to go out and do the schleppy work.
I love it. It's just the kind of thinking that we're going to need coming out of this, and I appreciate that, because we're going to have to get creative in the way that we engage with each other, what our products look like and feel like, how we continue to have high touch hospitality in kind of a new era of restaurants, of dining, of food and beverage. So just anybody, we don't have all the answers right now, but I look to people like the two of you that are just thinking about things correctly. And as adversity continues to come at us, we're going to pivot and find opportunities in that white space. And so I know whatever comes next for the industry, for wine, for restaurants, you guys will be at the forefront of it, because it's all about that thinking and ability to adapt and continue to tell stories. Like, we're just connecting with people. So Steve and Jayme, I really appreciate that. Jeremy, now who are we tasting wine with next, man? Like, this was amazing.
Gosh. Well, we'll have to figure that out. We can definitely hook something up for sure.
I think this is we're gonna have to do more of this for sure. This was amazing. Jeremy, you're now on the spot to find our next guests for our wine tasting. We're gonna have to do this every couple of weeks. Jeremy Holloway, Somm at Mercantile Dining and Provisions in Denver. He's got the Midas touch when it comes to wine and knowing who we need to be talking with when it comes to wine. Steve and Jayme, really great juice and really great story. And I love everything that you guys are doing, and continue to do that, because we need those moments of levity. So thank you both for being on the show as well. And thank you for the wine.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to share.
All right, everybody. You guys have a great day. Appreciate you all.
Cheers.
Cheers. That was nice. Tasting some wine. It's been a while just to have a moment, just, to taste some wine. It's really good juice. Riesling. Get yourself into some Riesling. It's a super interesting wine. It's so good with food. And right now, you're at home. You got to cook yourself something. Grab a bottle of Cellar Riesling and cook something delicious, or have some barbecue chips or some jalapeno poppers or just some meat and cheese boards. You'll be happy with that dessert. It's pretty versatile. So thank you to Jayme and Steve from the Cellar out in Hotchkiss, Colorado, for sending out some wine, for talking with us, and just the leadership, the thinking, the creativity in this moment is really needed. So appreciate that. And to Jeremy for connecting us originally, talking about that in his episode. Also, Simone FM Spinner actually connected Jayme, Steve, and I on Facebook, because she also mentioned them as well. So they're getting shout outs from multiple movers and shakers, people I respect and that we've had on the show. So hopefully this was fun, a little bit different, tasting the wine and a little more interactive. First time I've really talked about food in this way. So let me know if you guys appreciate it. And tomorrow's episode, Nelson Perkins, former chef owner of longtime iconic restaurants, Colton Gray, St. Ellie's Beyond here in Denver, Colorado is going to be on. He shut down his operations not too long ago. So I'm interested to get his perspective on kind of having a little bit of distance from the industry and seeing what's happening in this current moment. So check in tomorrow, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. I appreciate you. I think Betsy and I are going to be drinking some of this.